Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Nicole Forbes with Dennis's 7Ds, and I am coming to you live today from our Vancouver location here on Mill Plain in what we are using as our in-person classroom here, with classes that we are resuming every other week with a small limited number. So check our online website to see the classes scheduled out into the future. This is also, Becky tells me, something like our 100th video. So officially back in spring of 2020, we began making these videos because we could not gather in person and have our normal gardening classes. Since then, of course, things have, COVID has waned and waxed, and right now it's really just become a part of life that we are all operating alongside with. And so we will be wrapping up these live stream videos and resuming, as I mentioned, a more in-person live together class program within the next couple of weeks. So if you are local, I really look forward to seeing you. If you are not local, now there's another reason to move to Portland. So with that being said, today's a craft day. Today is a day to, I mean, it's a little cloudy outside, so to be honest, in my mind, today is a perfect gardening day. I would love to be out there when it's not quite so hot. There's so much that could be done outside in the garden right now, but it's also important to take a moment and appreciate a change in seasons, which we can feel in the air. And it's been a long, hot summer for a lot of us, dry. I'm so tired of watering. I'm really looking forward to some rain falling. And so it's that time of year that I tend to turn more to crafts in the fall. It's a really great way to sit yourself down and relax, but at the same time, you can begin by walking through your garden and harvesting things that you would want to, I don't know, celebrate and that are beautiful to you. And then whether you're making arrangements, fresh cut flower arrangements like we've talked about before in Backyard Bouquet, or doing a fall floral wreath like we're going to talk about doing today, you can take some elements that are available through your local florist, or if you go to the flower market, and add embellishments from your own garden, which make it special and again highlight things that are beautiful. So there's no actual handout for today's class. If I get around to it and if it seems really necessary, I can write down some steps on this, but really I think if you follow along, you're going to be just fine in figuring out how to do this. And part of, again, the reason that there's no handout is that to a certain extent, we're all winging it here, right? So we're just kind of being creative. We're making things up. There are a few techniques that I will share with you that are helpful, but honestly, it's the same wreath making technique that you can use in the winter with fresh cut evergreen boughs, or this time of year to celebrate fall, highlighting dried flowers, berries, or, I have rose hips, so we'll look at that. And then we're using, in today's wreath, we're using fresh eucalyptus, just these fragrant, let me gather my bundle here, fragrant bundles of fresh eucalyptus, and the eucalyptus will dry over time. So it's gonna turn kind of a softer blue-gray color and even maybe tones of brown. So we wanna remember that the eucalyptus isn't gonna stay this fresh powdery blue as it dries. But the eucalyptus is going to be the kind of bulk base of our wreath, similar to if you were using, or if you've done a winter evergreen wreath, you use, you know, kind of just like fir boughs, nice fluffy fir boughs as your bulk, and then you add the kind of pretty embellishments on top of that. So using a variety of eucalyptus that again smells wonderful. The room that we're in smells really good with the eucalyptus, and that's going to be our bulk material. We have a couple of different types of eucalyptus so that we get some different textures as we build our little bouquets, which I'll talk about next. But again, keeping with that blue-gray or blue tone, which is going to look great with the kind of orange and orangey red accents that we've chosen mostly to use with the floral bits. So that's our base eucalyptus. Then what are we attaching it to, right? We can't just wad up, well, you could, I guess. You could make a really pretty, you know, you want to just skip the whole wreath making, grab some beautiful eucalyptus, strip the stems a little bit, wire it together with maybe, you know, some dried flowers tucked in or whatever, and you could have just a swag, right? So if all goes wrong, grab all your materials together and just make something pretty you really can't miss. But we're not gonna fail today. We're gonna make wreaths. And I've got a couple of different wreath bases or, you know, the form, the foundation to work with so that we can kind of at least just see a couple of different examples. Because again, you may have, like me, in the wintertime, I make a holiday wreath or a evergreen wreath with this metal wreath form. It's a ring that comes in a couple of different diameters. This is a 14-inch diameter, which is going to end up making a pretty decent sized wreath when we're done with it. So usually you can kind of gauge that your wreath is going to almost double in size, not quite, 1.5 in size when you're finished with it, but you can also make a smaller wreath or a bigger wreath based off of what you're using. So this is our form. The metal rings are easy to find at like Joann's, or again, if you pull all of the greens off of your winter wreath, you may have one in the garage and you were like, what am I gonna do with this? Now you know. So here's a 14-inch. We're gonna work today with a 8-inch as well. So kind of just showing the difference in sizes and how they change the look of the wreath in general and how to work with them. Probably the most standard, but you could be like super crafty at home if you have grapevines growing, if you've got willow trees, you know, there's a lot of soft growing wood that you could wrap into a wreath yourself, or perhaps, you know, again, back to the craft store, pick up at the craft store one of these more grape, I think they're just like grape wood wreaths. So this is you can see it's thicker. It's just an all natural wood material. It's very lightweight, but we're using that as a base of a wreath as well. So we're gonna cover it up so it's not really important that it's beautiful. And so like I said, if you can grab some vines out of your garden, and you don't even have to let it dry. I mean, the softer the wood, right, the better you can wrap it up. Try to be round. The wreath should be round, so keep it in a circle. And if you can make your own form, this is pretty sturdy, make sure it's sturdy, then you could work with that as well. So homemade wreath form, wreath form from the craft store, Joann's, Michael's, wherever you are, or your recycled metal frame from an old repurposed Christmas wreath of days gone by. These are the types of things that we're going to build our wreath on top of. Now, as you see here, this is a good example of how the wreath increases in size as we build it. So this is our 14-inch ring, same size as my grape wreath ring. But you see now, as I'm adding material to the wreath, it's going from its original diameter and increasing by, oh gosh, 6 or 8 inches on each side. By the time we build this out, it's going to be a larger wreath than the ring itself, which is possibly important to consider because of where you may hang it and where it will be displayed. If, you know, all of these little airy dangly bits are constantly, if it's a really big wreath and I want it on my door, those might get like slammed in the door every time it opens and closes. So maybe I want to have a smaller wreath for a door, and this would be the type of wreath size that I might hang over my fireplace mantle, or something where I've got a larger piece of wall to appreciate and not have something that's going to be constantly you know, moved or manipulated or whatever. So now we use this it's paddle wire, everyone. We use this wire to create the wreaths for a couple of reasons. Now, again, we, as my mom would say, that's me and the mouse in my pocket. I like paddle wire. I like paddle wire because I can use a continuous piece of wire and not be constantly cutting pieces and twisting and then trying more and more. You have too many knots and too many twists, and you know, my fingers don't want to do that. I'm sure you could get pliers and all that. I probably should, but I find paddle wire to be incredibly easy to use because it just comes on this long roll. It's fairly heavy gauge, and you can wrap it around one end of the wreath form, for example, and then just, like I said, keep pulling with good tension and secure your bundles to the wreath frame with a continuous piece of wire instead of so many cuts and knots. Now, that looks like, Becky can get a close-up here. What that looks like is the wire coming around and overlapping the bundles that you put together, securing it to the wreath form itself, and then pulling that wire back around and doing it maybe one or two, I think I've probably done 4 or 5 times per bundle to secure it. So then, of course, you can finish. After it feels secure here, you can finish by just pulling your wire back into the center of the wreath while you create another bundle. Sometimes I like to work ahead and have several bundles done at a time, but it all just depends, of course, on, you know, how you like to work and maybe how much space you have available and all of that. So when we're building the bundles and when we're creating a wreath design, well, like I said, you really can't go wrong when you have a bunch of materials that already just look nice together. The blue grays or kind of silver blues of the eucalyptus are really pretty with, here I'll just use the bundle I've already made. Blue grays and silvers of eucalyptus, they have this beautiful though rusty stem. Then of course we've pulled just, I don't know what, guys, I don't know what this is. Dried bits of some sort of grass, right? So just dried bits that you find in the garden, when paired right with different materials, look beautiful, and it gives us a little bit of airiness and just an extension, just a slight extension on the bouquet. So as I mentioned, the bulk is our eucalyptus. we can kind of create a different, a flow, you know, by bending or manipulating the branches. Now suddenly my dried bits came to the front, so I want them to be in the back. Then there's our base. Then I've added some embellishments to this bouquet. And this one here has a little shrub that I cut out of my yard called leptospermum or tea tree. And it's just super cool. It's got these like itty bitty little teacuppy seed pod things that if they catch in the right light look neat, but they're sort of dark as well. So they're a nice contrast. So I just am building a bouquet in my hand. Then I'm gonna add some color. So here's our dried floral bits. Some sort of straw flower maybe, not sure what it is. And a little poppy pod. So these are just, again, things that maybe you find in the yard or find at the florist or flower market. I just broke the head off of the poppy pod, so we got more of those. Well, okay, I'll just get a bigger one there and tuck it in. Okay, so now this bouquet here in my hand, I'm gonna lay on my wreath form, and I'm gonna lay it on not straight in line with the other, this is a mess, you guys. I'm not gonna lay it straight in line, I'm gonna lay it at an angle. So that it sticks out, almost like a 45-degree angle from the wreath. So as you can see that the other ones are, so we're gonna half overlap the last bundle that we laid. I know that that's like, well, but it's so pretty there. Yeah, but you'll see it behind. There's our angle. Okay, and now I'm gonna put it back on the table because that's really hard to do. Now, holding that bouquet, grabbing your paddle wire, you're gonna go around them, like I said, 4 or 5 times feels secure to me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we can alternate kind of our pattern as we go. So now grab some more eucalyptus. So right now that's like 3 stems. Oh, sometimes it's helpful to like strip a few leaves off the bottom. Okay, so 3 stems of this kind. I'm gonna grab 1, okay, 4 stems. Then I'm gonna get this little chunky type. So there's the base, there's our eucalyptus base. Then I wanna repeat some of the design elements that I've done in here, but not exactly. You know, I don't wanna do the exact same thing around. Well, you could, but I don't wanna do that. So now I'm gonna add my little airy dried bits to the back. And then I'm gonna use this grass plume again, because that's fun. So here is a fountain grass flower. This is from Pennisetum mordri that's growing here in the landscape at the Den of 70s, and it matches, of course, conveniently, not like I planned it, it matches this beautiful rosy stem on the eucalyptus. So serendipity, I mean, you'll find all of these colors just start looking like they were planned together, because nature has got great style, in my opinion. So just kind of, let's see. Yeah, I like that. We'll put it out a little bit. So we, like I said, there's building our bundle. We need to get a little bit more of that leptospermum from my garden, because it's in there as a, like I said, that contrasting element. Maybe one more. Okay, and a little pop of color. No, let's just put it on like this and see, because we already have some color.
Can you hold it up to the camera a little bit?
A bouquet just for me. Okay, so here we lay it on our wreath at an angle, halfway overlapping the last bundle that we made. And we can finesse kind of as we go, like changing the angle a little bit after you've wound the whole thing up, and tucking little bits in to kind of where you see the wreath or where you have gaps. That can all be done after the fact. 2, 3. One more for good measure. Okay, so here we're building. And you see again, I'm repeating some of the same elements, but not every single bundle. Here is 1 bundle, 2 bundles, 3 bundles, and this is the 4th bundle that we've put on. So now on the 4th bundle, I've brought that grass in again. Some of the elements we have the same all the way around. So the dried grassy bit, the foundation of our eucalyptus, and then we won't worry about this. We can either trim this out as we go, or we can tuck and kind of change the angle. Oh, look, oh, that looks better already. I've already added some things like a kind of deconstructed hydrangea flower, so I'll show you how to do that, but as filler to hide some of the bits where we'll see some of the wreath frame. So here is where I'm going to stop on this wreath for just a minute. It almost buried the metal wreath, since this little green one is, like I mentioned, this is an 8-inch wreath ring. And so for an 8-inch ring, whereas on a 14-inch ring, we were using eucalyptus bundles that were maybe almost like between 10 and 12 inches long. So longer bundles for a bigger wreath ring. So for our smaller ring, an 8-inch ring, we'll probably use more like, I don't know, 6 or 8-inch bundles instead of 10 or 12-inch bundles. So our bouquets are what I mean by bundles, right? And we're still sticking with the eucalyptus base. I've got one that I've assembled here that I'm gonna start with. And of course I've got a little cluster of rose hips in here. So as I pinch it, there's thorns. So I guess, again, like already look at my fingers. You might wanna wear gloves. My table is a mess and I'm like dropping dried bits all over the place. So you might do this in your garage or while the weather is great outside. But here is a smaller, so more like a, 8-inch, it's a generous 8-inch, but here's an 8-inch bouquet that I'm gonna start. It's even a little long, so actually I'm gonna scoot up my floral bits a little. hops flowers, rose hips pods. Take those for a sec and shorten the stems. Now you could have any kind of snips, I suppose, or scissors even, but you know, a good sturdy pair of garden pruners will cut just about anything that you need to cut in your project. So that's an advantage of like being able to take a big wad like that and just snip the whole thing. So here's our, I want to cut that one because it's crazy. There, we just reorganize it. Shorter now. Replace the color, the rose hips, the hops. Oops, but I got ahead of myself. Shocking. Paddle wire, metal wreath frame. We need to attach the wire to the wreath frame. So on these little guys, you've got two parallel rings attached with this little kind of metal crossbar that gives it strength and reinforcement. These little metal crossbars are where I choose to attach the wire. So I just bring it in and around with plenty of length. So if you have enough on a great big paddle like this, you don't have to worry about running out. So then we're just gonna make sure that it seems secure. And again, you could do all of this with pliers, and then your hands don't get all wrecked. And you can, if you use a long tail as such, then you should be able to take the tail and loop it around before you ever get started and create a hanging loop while you work. So I'll just twist that up, and now part of the attachment to the wreath frame is also where I'm going to hang the wreath. So you'll see that little loop in the back. But I've got the paddle wire attached as well. So if you drop it, okay, just wind it back up a little bit so that you've got enough slack, but not, you know, miles of wire. I'm gonna actually have it out to start. My bundle. We'll get this guy over here a little. Blank slate. And back to this little bouquet that I've assembled. And as you see here, we're gonna do the same thing as we lay it on the ring. We're gonna lay it at about a 45-degree angle. So your wreath will look a little weird if you've got everything lined up along the ring's arc. So that 45-degree angle makes it kind of poof out enough that your wreath takes on dimension and shape. So holding it, you're kind of holding it in one hand, grab that paddle wire. I'll show you what I'm doing here in a sec. Getting the first one attached is sometimes the most difficult. Okay, 1, 2, in this case, 3. Okay, so there's our first little bundle attached on an 8-inch. And if we keep working on that one in the same sense, when we do quick little bundle assemblies, remember we're making shorter ones now, so 1, 2, oops, strip the leaves. So 1, 2, 3, maybe of the bulky. Oh heck, 4. Then one of these more stiff. Oh, strip the leaves. Okay, one of the more stiff kinds. Then we go with our airy bit again. Get a shorter piece. Okay. Kind of try to have the stems be at a similar angle or a length angle. Cut. And what kind of embellishment we can do? Let's do a little flower, which will, it's the color matches our rose hips. So that's kind of fun. Flower, and keep it simple. So now, laying that little bundle, it's a smaller, remember, smaller bundle, smaller wreath. We're gonna lay it halfway, covering the last bundle that we laid. Grab our ring, our wire. And that's okay that this, see, we can kind of tuck it in there. So, 2. Three, so you can see how it's coming along. 2, 3, boom, bang, like this, one more, cut the ends, strip some leaves, airy bits, in the back. Now, some of this, like the rose hips, maybe they'll dry and turn ugly. Sometimes you find, you know, like holly berries on a tree in your yard and you think, well, these berries are beautiful right now. They may not last forever. Maybe they won't look beautiful for the entire time that you want to look at this wreath. But there's nothing wrong with having some seasonal items that, you know, maybe you pick, you know, up a beautiful fall leaf on a walk, or a wad of, I'm always picking up like a wad of lichen or something that just is so pretty. You can tuck that into your wreath and enjoy it for as long as it's beautiful, and then pull it out, you know, and add something different, so that the fall wreath kind of is something that just celebrates the seasons and all things that are beautiful in nature. And kind of part of, again, fall is that this is like a time of transition. This is a time where we see the beauty in like death and renewal and the cycles, as well as like, I mean, look at this. These are seeds, and you know, this is a season of growth. We have pollen-rich seeds in this lovely hops that, of course, we could harvest and make tea or beer, obviously, with our hops. big swollen seeds of this dried grass. So really this just also represents like abundance and the circles, the cycle of life. Death and rebirth is all right here kind of for us to witness, as well as then, you know, the symbolism of a ring, the circle. I mean, all of these things, you know, it's not just a holiday tradition or a, you know, Christian Christmas tradition. Wreaths have been created for a long time for lots of different celebratory occasions. So here's another little bouquet that I was trying to make while I rambled on about wreath symbolism. So obviously being uncomfortable with having so much downtime or quiet time on a video that would normally, if we were doing this in person, we would be all like chatty and, you know, you'd be catching up with your girlfriend or whatever. So laying it halfway over the last bundle, 45-degree angle or so, trying to not, you know, smash our hops. 2, 3, and again, 4 is fine. Tuck that in. So you can see how it's coming along. Now, obviously, some of the pieces are hiding my little embellishments, but that can all be either snipped out or kind of redone, or you might even see the advantage of creating a foundation, you know, building your primary wreath with the base, and then kind of going back in every so often and adding the embellishments almost afterwards. So now that 8-inch, you know, you can see there's that 8-inch ring, but we're gonna end up with a wreath that's about maybe 14, 16 inches in diameter when it's done. So with just the light airy bits giving it that extension, we can snip, like I said, or kind of manipulate some of the eucalyptus pieces to behave, you know, go in the direction that we want them to. And as we, let's see, let's do one more bundle and I'll show you kind of how to finish it. 1, 2, 2, 2. Nobody's got any questions? Has there been any comments, Becky? Is anybody making a wreath out there as we talk? Comment on that? No, it's okay. You're not expected to do that. Is anybody even out there?
Yes.
Oh, good. So, let's put, there's our, this is a long one, so I need to shorten. Getting a little ambitious. Bundle. Oh, it just all went crazy. Okay. Strip the leaves. Strip the leaves. Here. There, that's. There's a good foundation, adding the back bits. Okay. And yeah, I mean, dried things are kind of delicate too, so you always want to either A, have extra, or B, expect some, you know, damage. Just expect some damage. Tuck that back in here. Oh, see, crazy. All right. So when we are finishing, the hops. Take the leaves off. They'll dry out and fall off anyway, so. Put that in there. Okay. Like I used to say when I was a kid, let's pretend. So let's pretend that I have continued to build this wreath around, boom. So that was 2 bundles. That's 2 bundles. So let's go 3, 4, 5, 6, probably maybe 7. So this would be either the 7th or the 8th bundle. And as it comes around, as you're coming around the ring, still keeping that 45-degree angle, well, as you come to the last section, you're going to have an overlap. And you're kind of going in this direction, so you might as well just tuck it in. And a little bit of an overlap. And I can't show you because the wire is now over here, but your wire will be over there. Then you just wire it all in. Now you could also do it in the opposite, like the opposite direction, or just add and tuck in a few sprigs so that you don't have like a place where the foliage kind of separates. So just make sure that your ring goes all the way around and stays nice and full. Now, I showed you, I mean, if you wanted to use this just like long pieces of wire, you could have pieces of wire cut, pre-cut, and then even make your bundles ahead of time. So you could make 6 or 8 little bundles, wrap them even with wire so that they're kind of pre-collected and ready to go. And that would be a nice like assembly line style. If you were making a dozen wreaths for friends or something like that, it might make more sense to, I don't know, work with a couple of other people and do that more assembly line style. Things that I picked, well, things like I said that were picked up at the flower market, just fun, assorted, dried flowers, whatever's around. I mean, fresh flowers are gonna die and dry anyway, so you might as well go with things that are already dried. They are stiff and they're gonna hold themselves up. Dried flowers, you know, are gonna kind of need to have some time where they get sturdier. So dried flowers are great at the market. The eucalyptus that you may have growing in your own yard, or you may, again, find that at a florist's, or, you know, even at your market. Smells great. Craft store sometimes has these kinds of things as well. Then you could either have grown or purchased for yourself the wonderful baby's breath that is used so frequently in bouquets. This is just dried. This has been dried, so a dried gypsophila or baby's breath. I was also showing off poppy pods. Is a fun, these just give you great texture and a place for your eye to rest, but not something colorful, so they contrast great against some of the brighter colors of the flowers that we're using. The chartreuse or kind of limey accents are really great, especially with the eucalyptus, because it pulls some of the colors out of the eucalyptus that you might not already be noticing. So the chartreuse color of our hops flowers now, but remember, these are fresh hops. So hops will fade to kind of a brown color as it dries. So these I just cut probably last night or the day before from home. So they will begin to turn brown and won't be as vibrant of color. Other, like I said, just kind of neat things that I walked around my garden and I thought, well, I like that. That looks cool. This was the Leptospermum tea tree. I think it's a New Zealand tea tree, something like that. I've had it forever. It's just a drought tolerant, really neat shrub. with its fun little seed heads that it's got that I think are kind of ornamental and attractive. These are all rose hips. So rose hips that I picked from my Rosa Glauca last night. So the rose hips are, here you can see still the leaves that are gonna dry up and kind of fall off because like I said, these are fresh picked. But the rose hips some of them will dry pretty nicely. It depends on where you keep your wreath. Some of them are going to kind of shrivel and maybe fade in color, but shrivel up kind of raisiny and be cool looking and not rotten or gross. Some of them might turn black and mushy and maybe be rotten or gross. So depending on, again, where your plant dries, how long, or where your wreath dries, how long you maybe have to let the rose hips dry or cure themselves before you put them on the wreath. I can already see these kind of shriveling up, so we'll see which way they go. But this is the perfect kind of thing that looks great now. I love the color now. Maybe they won't last forever. I made the wreath, which means I can unmake part of the wreath and then just add more colorful things as I need to. So rose hips, super fun, right out of my garden. I had the fountain grass flower, so Pennisetum mordri, that we picked out of the landscape this morning. Fall is just a great time to see those little fountain grasses making their flowers or inflorescence. Pennisetum mordri, as hopefully you can kind of see in the picture, is airy but has this sort of slight burgundy hue to it. So just a great texture, fun. I mean, honestly, like I love just the look of this as a bouquet. Definitely feathery, so a great texture. But the more you like handle this, or if somebody keeps patting on it like me, it's gonna fall apart. So you need to keep that in mind, and maybe this won't last forever. This may not be the wreath that you like take out every fall, dust off, store, at the end of the season and use again and again. It just may not look like something you want to keep year after year. But the point is, that was way too much fun. The point is you made it from either things that you had or things that you could find locally, and it's all natural materials, so make it again. That's part of the fun, and you could do something different or you could do the exact same thing. Bee's breath, eucalyptus, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then this is a hydrangea flower that is as big as my head. This comes from Annabelle Hydrangea. This is the end of the season for Annabelle, so the flowers have gone from a pure white, kind of a snowy white. Now they're aging to this cool green color. You can see a little bit of brown on part of this flower. And again, once we deconstruct and start to cut this flower, we may have more brown, in which case maybe at some point we'll take it back out of our wreath. But to deconstruct, I mean, no matter how big of a ring, well, I guess we could have a really big ring, but even on my 14-inch ring, I'm not gonna fit this giant flower on there. It's just not gonna fit. But I can deconstruct this giant hydrangea flower into smaller hydrangea bits, which is what we have here. See, that came out of that hole on the backside of this hydrangea. And by deconstructing, we can now add the smaller bits onto our wreath. You can just kind of see the network of stems on the inside of the flower and simply cut the smaller stems off of the larger stem. Now, untangling these. It's like broccoli. I mean, if you've taken broccoli apart, you've got this. So now we untangle this and we can do the exact same thing. Florets, the flower has the same florets like broccoli. So now we can, oh, they're tangled a little, take that apart. And even this, if we needed, if we wanted to use our smaller wreath, we could take this further apart by cutting here. And now we have kind of two tiny bundles. Or we could disassemble, and reassemble into just a more compact wad and put that in just like we see part of our wreath frame here. So I can take the stems. There's a real challenge. Take the stems and tuck them in where I can see my wire. And then that helps to hide or fill in any weird gaps or holes that you have. You do the exact same thing with, let's see if I can just do this. Yeah. You can do the exact same thing with bits of eucalyptus. Make them, the right size or length or whatever, where you see maybe a little bit of wire and you don't want to see that wire. Find a spot where you can insert it. Better if the leaves are gone. A little bit of wire down here, and I can just kind of work it in, tuck it down into the wire until it's secure. And obviously now I can just kind of work and snip or tuck in so that it lays properly however I want it to. I have seen lots of these wreaths done with all of the same steps as I've shown you, only from the grape wreath ring style hot glue. You can do all of this with hot glue. You love your glue gun and you're all about glue sticks and glue, then hot glue it is, because that works just fine too. It's some plant material, especially fresh plant material, doesn't do quite as well with hot glue. I find hot glue to be, I'm a little bit of a mess and I have things to sweep up, but I don't have glue all over the place. So hot glue can be kind of a mess and a messy cleanup, but it's just as appropriate to make your wreath that way as well, or even to use hot glue or your glue gun to add embellishments after the fact. So you could do a very basic bulk wreath of eucalyptus, ring it, with your wire, tie up your paddle wire, then go back with the glue gun and glue in things like the berries and the hops and those kinds of things. So completely up to you, but this is how I like to do it, and that's why I teach it that way. With that being said, I am gonna finish off my wreaths, and so we'll put pictures of the finished product in the, probably in the comment section or something like that. If you have any questions, I will answer them as well after the video. I hope that you find some beauty in your garden and in life today, and celebrate and savor it by making a wreath. As always, happy gardening.